it's an introductory lecture. We are not always sure what is the level of the participants, what they are looking forward to. So it will not be hardcore statistics, just be an introduction to medical research, what are the issues we need to take care of. So first thing, there are 3 or 4 parts of this lecture. First is, what is medical research? What is medical research? Any ideas, any insights on that? Anyone wish to? Yeah, please.
Medical research, if we have any problem which we are looking for the solution.
Pertaining to medical science, right? Okay, sit down. So, any idea what we are aiming to do with medical research? What we try to achieve with medical research? She said we'll look for solutions. Okay, anything else? Maybe something else?
Deciding the grade of recommendation.
Level of recommendation, okay, good. Whether we recommend a particular therapy or not, what else? We're looking for career progress. We need to publish, we need to move ahead. That's also one important aspect. So this is what I could come up with. One is collection of data. How good does India do with regards to collection of data? What is your general perspective compared to the rest of the world, say the developed world? How good is the Indian data collection system? How many say very good? Can raise your hand, please. How many say so-so, almost equal to West? Okay. How many say very pathetic? No one wants to say pathetic. You will not be called anti-national, I will tell you that. Okay. It is a very disastrous state we are in. Why? Because data collection seems to be the least of Indian priorities in medical sciences, right? And Western people are often surprised that those who come here to our medical institutes, that the chunk and the bulk of the patient that we get every day, there is so much human data, but why we do not collect it and why we do not preserve it, right? And that creates a lot of problems for us because we have to rely entirely on the Western observations to decide our own guidelines. Second, growth of the subject. Obviously, if you do not make new discoveries, the subject per se does not grow. Career progression. We don't want to state this, but definitely if you want to go ahead with your faculty interviews or you want to go for postdocs abroad or anything like that, you'll be needing to show your papers, right? So that's an important aspect. That doesn't mean just go into the publishing industry and publish as much as possible. Try to do some meaningful work. And exploring avenues, like there are many of our MBBS students who nowadays, because they're really fed up with staying back here, so they want to move abroad and they're appearing for, say, the PLABs and the USMLEs. And they appear and they need these publications because it often gives them a good CV to go for those. So what sets the biological sciences different from the physical sciences is what is called the concept of normality. Why this is important? It often happens when you'll be talking to your friends who are, say, in the engineering side or who are maybe in the physical sciences side, who do not have a biological background. They will be pretty perplexed. They sometimes come up with queries to you, like you see the serum SGOT, SGPT levels, right? That's something that shows your liver inflammation state. It is a bit beyond cutoff. The normal range is up to, say, 40 units per liter, and they will be getting results like 45, and they're really scared. And they'll call you up in the middle of the night, and you just have to explain to them that this is just normal. So a biologist's perspective of normality is different from the perspective of a person who is dealing entirely with the physical sciences. Okay, a very few number of people actually come in the middle. If you do a normal curve, if you take the height, weight, anything, serum markers, hemoglobin, everything. So not everyone falls in the middle or even in the range. There will be some who are a bit to the left side, some to the right side, right? So getting people convinced on this idea is important, and this is what sets biological sciences apart. And the general Indian attitude to research, as I already mentioned, is anything will do. So these are unpleasant truths, but we have to tell you this. So everyone is conversant with English, right? So I don't need to change language in between. Okay, that's good. So what this attitude is like is you have very good clinicians over here in India who will go to any extent for patient care. Right, they will take every care that the patient is given, every possible benefit of treatment. not compromise even a little bit. They will probably scold their residents that तुमने ऐसा कैसे कर दिया? How did you do this? The patient may suffer. Same clinician comes back to the chamber, starts doing research and will tell the same resident, data में थोड़ा बड़ा घटा दो, कोई फर्क नहीं पड़ता है. Why this attitude? We need to get rid of this. The same amount of importance that you give to patient care, the same amount of importance you give to your data. You do not fudge a single bit of data, right? You do not take 5 observations and write it as 10 observations. Even if you know that if I just multiply everything by 2, nothing is going to affect, my results are not going to change, but do not do that. The data is as important as the individual patients that you are dealing with. So there are basically 3 types of medical research work that students in India do. This lecture was mainly focused on MD students, but again, I think even PhD, those who are pursuing PhD, those who are not from a clinical background, even if there are any faculties or postdocs over here, everyone will find this more or less that the type of research that you do mainly centers on these 3. One are case reports, one are original articles, one are reviews, right? And there is something called the hierarchy of epidemiological study designs. So whenever you do epidemiological study, there is a general hierarchy. Case reports come at the bottom, then come case series, that means multiple cases. Those who are pursuing, say, PhD in the non-clinical sciences or basic sciences, you have got idea about these concepts? Have you got? Can you just show a raise of hands? You have got, okay. Those who are from a non-MBBS, non-BMS background, those who are from pure science background, some of you. So have you heard of these terms before? So you have a general idea of what case reports are. एक patient को देखा, उसमें कुछ interesting मिला, we try to publish it, it becomes a case report, right? Multiple patients को देखा, 8-10 patient को देखा, we try to publish it, it becomes a case series. Go higher and higher up, you will be having multiple sessions over the next 6 days in which you'll be taught, I think, to do everything. And finally, it will culminate with doing a meta-analysis, which is even at the top of this list, right? In the last day. But remember one interesting thing. This is not always true. So general perception is, and we have become so fixated on evidence-based medicine, that जैसे ही आप कुछ बोलने जाओगे, तो तुरंत opposition से बात आएगी कि इसका evidence क्या है? Are there any meta-analysis? Meta-analysis is not possible for everything. And can you tell me one very big flaw that may be there in a meta-analysis? Any guesses? क्या flaw हो सकता है? क्या problem हो सकती है?
The basic data is like it's an analysis of analysis. The analysis which we are deriving data from. If something is problem there, the everything.
Right. Sit down. You.
Poor indexing.
Poor indexing. Okay, good. So if many people have not published and you want to do a meta-analysis, then you don't have the data at hand, so you cannot do it. And a very important thing she also mentioned, that if the basic data itself is faulty, and why this comes is because in the current times, most of the drug companies, they run the drug trials all over the world. Whatever type of system of medicine you are practicing, majority of the trials are being done by the pharma industry backing. So if a company wants to launch a drug, it will be doing favorable RCTs. The RCT results are all going to be in positive. There are ways of fudging data. You don't need to always do completely unethical things. You can skip some of the things. You can do a little bit of different analysis. And so when someone sits down to do the meta-analysis of the same data, say you do a meta-analysis of a new drug which is brought up in the market by one company and you do 10 trials, evaluation of 10 trials, all of the trials have been done in different countries by branches of the same pharma company. Then you have a flawed meta-analysis. And so you do not always go by this hierarchy. So a person comes up to you and says, ये तो evidence-based medicine नहीं है. In clinical sciences or in medical sciences at any level, or in biological sciences also, you need to give importance to individual observation. जो आप रोज patient में देख रहे हो या जो आप रोज animal model में देख रहे हो, अपने observation को भी importance दीजिए. And that's why this important quote from William Osler, prominent physician, Always note and record the unusual, publish it. This goes exactly opposite to the Indian attitude towards medical sciences. We see, and our doctors see a lot more patients than those seen in the West, but they don't publish it, we don't come to know, right? Place it on permanent record. On a short, concise note, such communications are always of value. And can you read this? This is a paper from the American Journal of Dermatopathology, published somewhere in the 80s. Can you see this? A preliminary communication on extensively disseminated Kaposi's sarcoma in young homosexual men. Any idea what this was leading up to? Right. So at that time, AIDS had not come into the market yet, right? But this was one of the initial papers which just was a set of observations by some prudent doctors that atypical Kaposi's sarcoma was coming in a particular group. This observation was just a case series, but that's the importance. Alzheimer's disease discovered by a case report. Parkinson's disease, case series. 6 people that James Parkinson had observed on the streets of London, and that made a case series, and that later became a disease entity. So do not underestimate the importance of observation in the biological sciences. Don't always try to make it mathematical, right? So there are 2 important paper types, as I mentioned. One is original article and one is a case report. Many of you will be writing both types of articles. Even those who are not from a clinical background may collaborate with your clinical friends to write a case report or an original article. So I just want to tell you, what is the first step in writing a case report? Any guesses? Idea, okay.
Identifying that something unusual is there.
That's the idea, more or less. Any, I mean, this is not written in a book. This is just the common mistakes that the people who are starting, they make. That's why I put this as a question. Abstract. Abstract is usually the last thing we do, and that's why we keep it quite sketchy, right?
Study of other cases related to.
Okay. First step. Research as to how many cases?
Documentation, proper documentation.
Excellent. So that is near about what I was trying to hear. You need to have all those documents in hand, and more importantly, you get patient consent. If you have this valuable piece of document missing, then you cannot go ahead and write it, because most journals would be asking for consent, and nowadays it is becoming very, very important. So all our residents, we always tell them, whenever a case report strikes your mind, I have got a novel patient, first thing you do is take a consent. If at that time, by chance, you do not have a consent form available, take it on a blank piece of paper with all the details, with a good signature, right? So that in the future, you can at least pursue the thing, right? This is even more important when, say, the patient dies. You cannot track the records, but you have some data available. So this is the first. When you are doing an original research, what is the first thing that you need to think of? Most important. Good quality data, okay. आपने अभी किया नहीं है, you just want to start. What will you be doing? First thing you think of? Literature search is, that's one important thing, all right. Something else? Someone comes up to you, some of your juniors when you are faculty, they come up, sir, मैं मैडम ये करेंगे, this is very novel idea we have, हम लोग इसको कट डालते हैं, एकदम top journal में जाएगा. Excellent, excellent. So we look at feasibility of the study. If the study is not feasible, we get a lot of collaboration ideas, right? We get it from those who are, say, working in the biological sciences, not in the medical sciences. They come up to us, they want to collaborate. They have a high-tech equipment in their lab. हमें बताते हैं कि सर आप कुछ samples provide कर दीजिए, हम बहुत अच्छा paper निकालेंगे. But can I get those samples? Right? One of the people from, say, one of the important premier departments in BHU came up to us. They wanted samples of amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, which is a neurological condition. The first thing I told them is those patients don't come to us. They go to neurology. So although I may have a craving that I'll be getting a high impact publication from this work, but I cannot give them a false assurance that I'll be able to provide you the patients. So first thing you look at is feasibility. टाइम फ्रेम क्या है, उस टाइम फ्रेम में आपको इतने पेशेंट्स मिलेंगे या नहीं, उसका डेटा आप कलेक्ट कर पाओगे या नहीं. We have very busy OPDs, right? Most of you who are going to biomedical research, you will be collecting, even from those from the non-MBBS or non-BMS backgrounds, you will be collaborating with someone. You will try to get human data or say population data. आपको ये पता होना चाहिए कि कितना डेटा आप प्रैक्टिकली कलेक्ट कर सकते हो. All right? So this is one. Then the other type are review articles. So review articles are normally invited. In the better journals, they are invited review articles, and they are invited from those authors who have a significant and long-standing experience in some field of work. Students or those who are just entering into the stream, such as us who are like younger faculty, we do not get a chance usually invited from the top journals to write review articles. But sometimes what happens is your mentors get an invitation and they will tell you कि तुम अपने writing skills improve करो, so you get the chance to write the review article, right? So that is one possibility. Or maybe you are submitting to one of the lower journals which are not very high impact, but you just want to add it to your CV, so you write this. There are two types of review articles basically. One are the narrative and the systematic reviews. Systematic will be dealt with in the meta-analysis section. So few points about narrative review. These are the topics that you usually choose. A new topic, like during COVID, the publication industry was in boom. You would expect कि कुछ publication आएगा ही नहीं because everyone is stuck at home, but the number of publications increased almost tenfold during COVID times because it was always a hot topic to write anything about COVID. And everyone was writing. It need not even be someone from the medical background, someone who sees patients, but everyone was writing papers on COVID. So you need to choose the topic carefully. It is good to choose a topic in which there are limited guidelines, because already if there are good society guidelines, like you have the American Heart Association guidelines or the American Geriatric Society guideline, if you have an international society guideline already present, then there is no point of writing an additional review unless you are a renowned expert in the field. You use multiple search tools. This is one of the paper management systems. Now, when you do the referencing, when you write the papers, one common mistake that we used to make when we were starting up, when we were residents, was that we used to do everything manually. Type the references or copy them from PubMed and insert the references in the text file. But that's not the way. There are some reference management software, such as we use Mendeley. There are many others also. And you can download. They are free to download, and it's very easy. So what happens is when you get the peer review comments, और आपको reference को ऊपर नीचे करना पड़ता है, then it becomes automated, right? But again, this is a drawback. With every aspect I am mentioning, invited reviews are not a substitute for reading the primary literature and critically forming your own opinion, because the reviewers may tend to have a bias. They may have included those articles जिसके लिए उनको favorable opinion है. So it is always good, even if you are reading a review, sometimes what happens is there is a sequence of false beliefs. Like one reviewer interprets one article in a wrong way, and the same thing is reviewed over and over again. So an idea is propagated that this is the correct version. So it is always good to go back to the original article and try to find out, right? Second part is how to do a data search. So how do you normally do a data search? कैसे करते हो? क्या use करते हो? PubMed. What else? Cochrane. That's good. Scopus. All right. What else? Google Scholar. वो भी use करते हैं. Sorry. Science Direct. Okay, Science Direct Elsevier का ही है. Okay, that's all right. What else? Web of Science. That's all right. So these are the different resources, right? So one very important resource is PubMed. And it is a web-based retrieval system which is developed by the NCBI. And PubMed has got multiple subsets. It has got a huge amount of medical information going back up to the 1800s. Many of the older texts have been digitized by the journals. They are also made available. और इसमें दो टाइप के चीजें हम लोग कॉमनली यूज करते हैं. वन आर द ऑपरेटर्स, सर्च ऑपरेटर्स, अनदर वन इज द mesh descriptors. So these are the common PubMed search. Have any of you done previously? Most have done. You have done. Okay. हाथ ऊपर कर सकते हो? Majority of you have done a PubMed search. So there are some Boolean operators and or not, right? जो commonly आप use करते हो. And the simplest type of PubMed search, there are two ways. You can search through the mesh headings, or you can search directly the full text, or you can search the title and abstract. Commonly in our practice, we normally go for title and abstract search. Okay? Or because it gives you a very concise information. Then you have multiple, what are called, I'll just go through that. Okay. So this is how we search. We go to the advanced PubMed search, and in the add terms to the query box, there you can see the bidirectional arrow. Normally we choose a title abstract. You can choose only title, you can choose only abstract, you can choose the full text or anything like that. There are multiple options. You put in a search term. Try to make the search terms short. Do not use complicated or 3 or 4 words in groups as a search term. You put single search terms, and then you can add. You see an add button at the right. So there you can choose the Boolean operator. It can be either and or not. Basically, when you choose and, it means that दोनों items present होने चाहिए. Or suppose you give 3 words, तीनों items present होने चाहिए in the title or abstract, then it will be giving you the output. If you want, suppose I'm doing a search on older people and Alzheimer's, right? So I'll be choosing Alzheimer's, okay? Or I choose 𝐕𝐢𝐬𝐬 because some people write it as Alzheimer disease. Narrow कर दिया. साथ में हमने and choose किया, and then I want to choose old. All right. But old can be referred to in multiple different publications by different names. किसी में elderly लिखा जाता है, किसी में older लिखा जाता है, किसी में old लिखा जाता है. So all of these together you can club in with or. But if any of these words are present along with Alzheimer, then PubMed will be giving you the results. So these only through hands-on you will be learning more of this. I'm just giving you a basic idea. These are all the search tools that you have already mentioned. There is something called 𝐷𝐶𝐽, in which all the Indian universities put their theses. So that is also available. Next part is submitting a paper. So how do we find the ideal journal? Any ideas?
Impact factor.
Okay, impact factor. How do you find the impact factor?
Like by Google or something.
So what will you put? High impact journals. That's one way of doing it. What else? Any idea?
Related to topic.
Related to your work, whatever work you are doing, you can put that work and see which journals it has been.
So the keywords we put and the
Yeah, you can get a list of, there is one website called �սկ𝐼𝐵𝐤, �սկ𝐼𝐵𝐤. There they give a very good list of journals. If your university has got a subscription to Web of Science, then Web of Science every year they publish the official impact factor list, right, in PDF form. So you can download that. If your university does not have a subscription, you can always go to ResearchGate and get the same impact factor list, because there are good people all over the science world. जो पहले दिन वो आता है, अगले दिन उसको put up कर देते हैं. So we sometimes get it from there. So from that you can get a general idea कि आपके field में which journals are at the top. Some of it you get from your supervisors. They tell you that this journal gets easy publications. You can go for this. All right. So those are different ways. There is something called the 𝐻𝐴N, Journal Author Name Estimator. 𝐻𝐴N is a free website. 𝐻𝐴N में आप जाके अपना अगर abstract को paste कर दोगे, तो वो आपको choice of journals दिखा देता है. So you can get an idea कि this type of papers have been published in which journals. And it shows along with the impact and everything. So you can then pick your individual choices. Preparing the paper is a headache sometimes because many journals ask for specific formats, but many publishers are now moving to something called your paper, your way. For one publisher is Elsevier. तो इसमें क्या होता है कि they do not ask you to format as per journal style at the beginning. only if it comes back after review. Because you waste a lot of time. You have sometimes one paper you have to send to 8, 9, 10 journals. Gets rejected from everywhere, and every time you are doing formatting. So having this is an advantage because you can send it in your general format. If it comes back with some minor revisions or if they want to accept it, then you have to do all the formatting. So this is one. So whenever you are submitting any paper to a journal, do look whether they are giving you this option of your paper your way. Little bit about the peer review cycle. When you submit a paper, you have submitted papers, some of you have done. So it goes through these different cycles, and these are some of the terminologies because sometimes it may be confusing for new persons कि paper का status क्या है. So these are the different terminologies they show. The initial step is the editorial assistant processing. That means it is done by non-technical people. They just match whether you have fulfilled all the rules of the journal or not. And after that, they can send it back to you with some technical modification queries. After that is passed, it moves to the editor. Bigger journals, they have one editor-in-chief, they have multiple handling editors, so editor-in-chief delegates to one of the handling editors. Then it shows the status. जब ये editor के पास होता है, तब इसमें से कोई एक आपको, जब आप खोलते हो submission website को, it shows either as editor assigned or awaiting EIC decision or reviewer assignment pending. Depending on the journal, it can show any of these options or even more. And then you have peer review. Right, so peer review varies from journal to journal. Some go for 2, some go for 3. There are some very good journals which do a very intensive peer review, so you can have up to 4 reviewers and their comments coming to you. And these are the different decisions that you may get. Accept, minor revision, major revision, reject and resubmit. Reject and resubmit commonly happens when the editor has taken a liking to your article. The reviewers may have given adverse comments, but editor को लग रहा है कि आपके article में potential है, तो अपने तरफ से suggest करते हैं कि you do some additional work or some additional research and you submit the paper again. And then it is up to him to send it to some other reviewers. So this is some option also that you may get. And you sometimes in Springer, in Elsevier and Wiley, you get an option to do a transfer. माने वो आपको transfer option देते हैं. Suppose you have sent to a high impact journal, they feel that paper is not up to the mark for us, but it may be good in one of the lower impact journals of our own publisher. So they will give you a direct transfer option. आप उसको select कर लो तो automatically सारे files transfer हो जाते हैं, तो your handiwork is reduced, right? You can directly go ahead with submitting. When a paper comes to you after getting the peer reviewer comments, keep these in mind when you are responding to the peer reviewer. You be polite, be to the point, reference properly. We peer review extensively for many journals. You know what really irritates us most of the times is if the authors do not show an intent in improving their article. और वो पता चल जाता है. You are casual in responding to the reviewer comments. You do not do it. Suppose I have given 10 comments and only 7 of them are addressed, the 3 of them are left as it is. So these are things which take up, because peer review is a very intensive work and it's unpaid. When for reviewing papers for journals, we don't get paid anything. So if it's a prestigious journal, then it adds to my CV. But we get a lot of publications from, say, average journals, which are just starting journals, from good publishing houses. We do it in our free time. But what is very irritating is if the authors do not try to revise whatever suggestions have been given. You can disagree with the reviewer, no one gets offended by that. You can state that we believe in this particular thing and you can back it up with references. But do not completely ignore the sentences, because that can create a lot of ill will, and sometimes reviewers are not in the good state of mind, they can simply give a reject decision, right? So take care of this also. And this is the final part of the talk. So Ashish sir, have I covered more or less a basic introduction to medical? Because you'll be having very intensive SPSS classes, you'll be having meta-analysis, regression, everything. My work was just to give you a general idea about medical research. So in balancing act is just want to highlight some points that you need to take care of when you are doing medical research, which may create some confusion in the early period. Reading between the lines. sometimes what happens, authors, including us, in order to get our papers accepted, because we know what are the social trends. For example, during the last 1.5 years, any paper showing that the COVID vaccines are very good, they would get accepted. Any paper showing even a little bit of negative about the COVID vaccines, they will get rejected, because that was the public perception. So sometimes what authors do, they do not discuss all the findings in the conclusion, because normally जब editor check करता है, they read the only salient parts. So authors have discussed everything in the results section, but they do not discuss it in the final part. So do not always go by what is stated in the conclusion, right? Similarly, in Alzheimer's disease, you know, amyloid beta hypothesis is the sort of holy grail of Alzheimer's. Everyone is running after drugs to reduce amyloid beta. Every single drug is failing. But if you do some research related to amyloid beta, it has got a greater chance of getting published as compared to if you do some research जो कि कोई alternative hypothesis बोलता है. The science community is very rigid. So that's why sometimes authors क्या करते, they do some trickery. They will find the results, but conclusion में उसको highlight नहीं करेंगे. So when you are a student or when you are a young faculty just starting off, always read the paper in detail, the results part, the discussion part. Do not just go by last line में author ने लिख दिया कि this drug is a miracle drug. Do not take it to heart कि this drug is a miracle drug, I will tell this to everyone, right? Publication bias, as I mentioned, there is a lot of bias going on in research. There is a lot of bias against Asian countries except China, because China is really having a lot of economic clout, right? They have their tentacles in all the big journals. But Indian authors have a lot of difficulty in publishing in good journals, right? Unless you have a good network abroad. So there is a publication bias. So anything coming from India, it will be difficult to publish. So sometimes हम लोग पूरी तरीके से dependent हो जाते हैं on Western literature. So keep that in mind. Again, if some of you are clinical doctors, that means you are actually seeing patients, if a randomized controlled trial says this drug is a miracle drug for this population, but you have used that in 10 people and all 10 of them have got a bad result, you do not go by that RCT result, go by your own observation. Try to publish that observation, right? And media alteration, this is a very big problem because now this is the time of social media. So media wale, जैसे couple of months back, we got some positive results with a new drug in a mouse model of Parkinson's, rat model of Parkinson's. मीडिया वालों ने, न्यूज़पेपर वालों ने हम लोगों से पूछताछ थोड़ा बहुत किया, उसको निकाल दिया, पार्किंसन का मिरेकल ड्रग निकाल दिया बीएचयू वाले डॉक्टर्स ने. सब पार्किंसन मरीज आप पूरी तरीके से ठीक होंगे. तो मीडिया कैन डू दैट. I mean, unless you want to really get an antagonistic terms with them, you don't sue them always, right? So in any case, इससे patients get a lot of misdirection. But as medical researchers, आपको पता होना चाहिए कि it was just an animal model study. Nothing has come out of it yet. But those small pros, the media will be highlighting in a completely different manner. So whenever you don't go by these media reports, even if they say, we quote a lot of experts. For example, just before starting this class, I was seeing on the mobile, this Times of India update, experts call for COVID vaccination in less than 12-year-olds. They just quote experts, but when you read the paper, you find out those people may not actually be experts of the field. So do not trust the media reports. Always look for the main title, right? Main paper, where it has been published. Go and find that paper, read the discussion, read the results. There are some problems with fudged research. ये बताना जरूरी हो रहा है because as I told you, the Indian attitude to research is anything will do. So don't pick up that attitude from early on in your career. There are two problems. By chance किसी को पता चल गया, you may be blacklisted for life by the publisher, by the journal. And the other issue, which is more of a moral issue, is you are misguiding the others. If your results are not replicable by others, that means the entire population is misguided. Suppose you do it from a premier institute and everyone in India starts following those same, then there is a possibility that entire guidelines will be wrong, right? Another concern is plagiarism. So what is your take on plagiarism? क्या होता है plagiarism? Any ideas? So, Giving credit, okay, that's good. Similarity, copy. How do you judge? Like suppose I have written something, someone else writes on the same topic, doesn't give credit to me. How do I judge that they have taken from my topic? It may be the same thing.
Same terminology. So there is a guideline given in the Belmont report, but I do not refer.
Right. So the important thing is plagiarism. The general perception is simple copy paste is plagiarism. That's not the case. Ideally, you should not be picking someone's idea also without acknowledging them. अगर किसी ने कोई चीज बोला है और इसको pick, sometimes it becomes very difficult. Those who are intelligent, they will mix up the sentences, use them in different paragraphs, do a lot of. But ideally, if you give credit to someone, it doesn't spoil anything for you, right? Your paper is still going to get published. So be very careful. Don't go for any type of plagiarism. Simply put, plagiarism does not only mean that you do a cut paste or copy paste, right? Even taking up someone's idea or a sequence of sentences can be plagiarism. And this is something, this is the last slide. This is what problem we face with submissions to Indian journals. Along with international journals, we also get a lot of review work done for Indian journals and p-values everywhere. As if you don't really understand, the person who is submitting doesn't really understand what is to be compared with what. You are doing a study to find out whether, say, male gender and smoking have any relation to lung cancer. And the authors have quoted a p-value between the male gender and the smoking also. But that is not your aim. That doesn't tell you anything. What you are aiming to find out is whether there is any significant difference among the lung cancer patients and not. So what happens, why these errors happen is because many of us from the biological background do not have a hardcore training in mathematics. Many have not taken mathematics in 11, 12 at all. Some may have taken, but over the course of medical teaching, they may have forgotten. So what the best way I find is, if you are a medical person who is not dealing with hardcore physical sciences or with a mathematical background, you are not a hardcore statistician, what you do, you think of the research problem in a simple sentence. You use it as a logic and then transform it into आपको कौन सा p-value निकालना है, क्या निकालना है, किसके बीच में relation चाहिए. You start to think. जैसे p-value आप quote करते हो ना, p-value quote करने का एक sentence भी होता है कि this shows a significant difference between this and this, right? So you translate it into your sentence कि my findings show a significant difference between smokers and non-smokers with respect to development of lung cancer. If you can do that translation, that means that p-value is meaningful. If you cannot do that translation, इसका मतलब वो आप एक false value दे रहे हो. So better to skip it completely, right? I think we have taken a basic general idea about biomedical research introduction. Thank you, everyone.